Right? For the most part, we did fine in the first objective. Slope for the first one should have been 0 because of your blue box. Whether you put that or not did not matter as long as you knew that it was a horizontal line, so your slope had to be 0. Whether you spelled out the word or wrote the number does not matter. Number 2, there were some issues, but for the most part we did fine. Right? So you needed to first set up your formula using the fractions. So 5 over 7 minus 3 over 5 all over 4 over 3 minus 2 over 3. Right, so that was one point. Did you set it up correctly? As long as, even if you switched it, if you switched both, and I still give you credit, if you only switched one, then you got half, but I don't think that happened here. Okay, then you had to get common denominators in your numerator. So you would have ended up with 25 over 35 minus 21 over 35. And then you could have either simplified this right away or waited, either or. And then that would have simplified to 4 over 35 over 2 over 3. Okay. When you are, if you're putting this in the calculator, make sure that you are doing this. Putting in a fraction in the numerator, and then going all the way to the bottom and putting in another fraction. If you don't do exactly what I did, you'll end up with a fraction that's weird. I think some of you may have did this. Go back. I lost track of where it was. Right. Notice where the fraction bars are. This bigger one is dividing all of this by this, and I think some of you put it in like that and got a different answer. So be careful how you put it in, because that will change your whole answer. Also, if you were doing it by hand, take this denominator, flip it, multiply it to both. So 12 over 70, which reduced to 6 over 35 was the final answer. Okay, so a point for showing all of your work, and then the final answer. I need to see if you're changing the fraction, whatever you change it to the point it gets simplified. After that, whether you put it in a calculator or do it by hand, then that part doesn't matter. Okay. Questions on either of those? Second part, for the most part, we did fine here as well. You needed to, and some of, I don't know if it was this class or next class, some of you did this by x and y intercepts, which was fine because it doesn't say which you need to do it by. If you're graphing by x and y intercepts, only plot 2 points. So I'll do both just in case you were the one that did that. So some of you converted, many of you converted, subtracted 2x, divided everything by -3 to get positive 2/3 plus 2. And then graph using that. If you're using this, you need to plot as many slope points as possible. So start at your y-intercept, go up 2 to the right 3, down 2 to the left 3. I can't go again, otherwise I'd be off the graph and we don't need to do that. If you were doing x and y intercepts, you could set the x equal to -6 and solve. Plot that point at -3. Do the same thing with the y. Divide both sides by -3. Plot that point, and it would just be those two. So either those two and you're solving by the intercepts, or you're doing the slope and y-intercept and you're plotting all the points. But if it says graph by a certain way, make sure you do that. Great. For the most part, we define here, if you need to, still use your $40. This is an x equals, so this needs to be a vertical line at 3. Questions on either of those? And then the back gave us more trouble than the first two. So this first one, you needed to do a few things. So one, make sure you're reading the directions because they're very specific. We need to plot the y-intercept and 2 additional points. So you should only have 3 points on this graph. You should not have a whole line. You shouldn't have them connected. It does say to create the graph of a line, but you aren't actually doing that. You're just plotting the points. It also says describe how the function was translated. So using this, the 2 out front is dealing with your slope. So that should have been the slope was steeper by 2, 2 times as steep, steep by 2, something like that. Okay. And then the -3 deals with your y-intercept. And since it's -3, that was shifted down. You do need to use these words, steeper, less steep, shifted up, shifted down. If there was a negative in front of the 2, you would say the slope was reflected. I don't know if it was this class or next class. Some of you said the y-intercept was reflected. That's not a thing.
Is the slope reflected when you down
Okay. So now that we've described the 2 things, and remember, if you don't see something, then something stayed the same, but there was something with the slope, something with the y-intercept, so something happened with both. Start with your y-intercept and move down 3. And then you just needed 2 other points. What points didn't matter? You can go up 2 to the right one, down 2 to the left one, you could go up 2 again, it does not matter. But you just needed 3 points. So the 5 points were, did you describe the 2 things correctly? Did you plot the 3 points correctly? Questions on that one? Okay. And then these were right or wrong. So the slope, if you counted, was 1/2. The y-intercept was like -4.5. So the slope was 1/2 the slope of f of x, and the y-intercept was 4.5 less than. Questions on either of those? Going back to review questions, or if you have specific questions in any of the previous notes. What questions do we have, want to see, want to go over last minute before you guys take your test? Also, I need to pass out something. While you guys are looking, did we have questions that we want to see, go over, want to review really fast? Yeah, and I might spread it also. So either on one of the separate sheets I gave you, or the review, there was a question that looked like this. Find that. I think it was a separate sheet. I only have a few extras if you need that. If you can't find it, that's okay. You could either write this on like the back of your quiz, just so you have it, refresh it in your memory. So if you see a number in front of f of x, it's going to be something to do with the slope. If you see a negative along with it, the slope is going to be reflected. So something like this, you would write 3 things, 2 things about the slope and 1 thing about the y-intercept. So the slope is reflected because of this negative. The slope is also steeper by 3. But in this case, there's nothing after it. There's no plus or minus after it. So the y-intercept didn't change. So that would be our description. Here, notice how this says graph the transform line. That's where you would fill up the graph, not just plot a certain amount of points. So start at your original y-intercept. The slope is 3, but it's been reflected. So instead of positive, it'll go negative. So 1, 2, 3 to the left, up 3 to the left, and 2 to the left. So the right. And down 3 to the right, and so on. You could also look at any of your other problems. For a reflection, there would be a negative in front. Now in this case, there's only 2 pieces, so it would have to have a part C. Was it reflected or not? Again, this would need like a part C. The slope is reflected or not. So I would say you'll probably mainly see a reflection in either like a question like this, where it's either described already and you have to plot points, or you have to describe it and plot the whole graph. Other review questions or questions on notes, practice, whatever. If we don't have any, take a second if you haven't already, find all the things, and then move some of you around, and you can put your